I thought I was just aging. Until the day I collapsed in the middle of scrubbing the bathroom floor and my daughter-in-law stepped over me like I was a pile of laundry. It began with the smallest of changes. I'd forget where I kept the sugar or stumble over my own feet. Some mornings, I'd wake up too dizzy to stand, but if I ever mentioned it, she'd shrug and say, "It's normal at your age, Miriam. You should be thankful you're not in a home." Her name is Vanessa, and on paper, she is my daughter-in-law. But in truth, she was the gatekeeper to my suffering. After my son Daniel moved overseas for work, she insisted I live with her for support. What she really meant was someone to cook, clean, and care for her spoiled child while she worked from home and lived like a queen. At first, I did it with love. But then, things changed. My energy dropped overnight. I'd cook a meal and forget the salt. I'd bend to pick up the child's toy and find myself breathless. I even wet myself once and had no memory of it. It was shameful, terrifying, and confusing. One night, I heard her speaking on the phone. No, she doesn't know. I crush it into her tea. She just nods and smiles now. I froze outside the door, heart pounding. Was she talking about me? About what in my tea? The next morning, I didn't drink the tea. I dumped it and pretended. That day, I felt clearer. Stronger. My fingers weren't numb. The room didn't spin. And that was when it clicked. Vanessa wasn't just insulting me behind closed doors. She was drugging me. Slowly, cruelly, to make me easier to control. When I confronted her gently, asking if my medication looked different, she smiled sweetly and said, "Your mind is slipping. You poor thing. It's time to reduce your pills. I'll take care of it." That afternoon, she took my pill organizer away, locked it in her bedroom, and told me I was no longer allowed to manage my own medicine. That's when I realized I was a prisoner in my own body and in my own home. I began to feel frightened every time she handed me something: water, soup, tea, toast. But what could I do? I had no proof. My son trusted her. My neighbors barely saw me. I was invisible, fading, and chemically silenced. Until one day, I collapsed at the pharmacy counter while buying shampoo. It wasn't a coincidence. It was fate. Because the man who caught me mid-fall was a new pharmacist, Michael. And Michael had noticed something that made him raise an eyebrow and lower his voice. "Mrs. Carson," he said, "your refill dates don't match your dosage history. And you haven't picked up your heart meds in weeks." But I had. Or so I thought. What followed was a slow unraveling of a horrifying truth, one pill bottle at a time. But that's just the beginning. Before you scroll away, I need you to hear this, especially if you're someone who has ever trusted the wrong person in your own family. If you've ever felt dizzy, weak, or silenced and been told it's all in your head, you are not alone. I was drugged, humiliated, and nearly erased by the woman who pretended to care for me. But I didn't stay silent. And neither should you. Please like, share, and subscribe if this story touches your heart. Tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Let's connect. Because someone out there needs to know they're not imagining things. They're being controlled. And they deserve to be free. The day after I fainted in the pharmacy, I sat across from Michael at the small consultation desk near the back. He had kind eyes, not the kind that pity, but the kind that listen. "I looked at your file, Mrs. Carson," he said softly. "The medications you should be taking, these aren't what you're actually ingesting." He tapped the name of my heart medication, then pointed to a small bottle he'd pulled from his drawer. "Do you recognize this?" I nodded. "Yes, that's what I've always taken." He shook his head. "That's not what's in your bloodstream now. I ran a discrete test with your collapsed sample. It shows heavy traces of sedatives and expired beta blockers. Someone's swapping your pills." The world tilted, but this time it wasn't from medication. It was fear. Real, bone-deep, soul-curdling fear. Vanessa. She had been mixing and matching pills behind my back, suppressing me, sedating me like some disobedient pet. "Can you prove it?" I whispered. He hesitated. "If we catch her in the act." That's when we hatched a quiet plan. Over the next 2 weeks, Michael helped me replace my pills with harmless lookalikes, sugar pills that would make no difference to my body. Meanwhile, I kept the ones she gave me and stored them secretly in a lipstick box beneath my dresser. Each day, I acted more tired. I slurred my speech. I forgot what day it was on purpose. I let my hand shake when she handed me tea and smiled like an obedient ghost. Vanessa seemed delighted. You see, she told her sister on the phone. She's practically brain dead now. She won't even know if I sell the china set. But I heard it all. I remembered it all. And with Michael's help, we sent those lipstick box pills to a lab. The results came in a week later: expired benzodiazepines, off-label antipsychotics, and 2 banned substances. The dosage could have killed someone my age. That night, I recorded her on my old phone. I asked her about the pills while setting my tea down untouched. You've been giving me the wrong ones, haven't you? She snorted. You don't even know what day it is, Miriam. You think I'm giving you poison now? That's rich. She didn't know the phone was recording from behind a pot of plastic daisies on the shelf. Her laughter, the smug, cruel kind, would later become the centerpiece of the case. But before justice came the final straw. She made me clean the backyard patio in the sun for 3 hours without water. I collapsed again. This time she didn't help me up. She walked past me and said, "You fall so much, it's honestly pathetic. Just die already." That was the day I decided to act. Not with anger, but with evidence. The next day, I made her a special cup of tea loaded with a harmless muscle relaxant Michael approved. I watched her wobble slightly, sit down, and mutter, "What the hell did you give me?" And I smiled. It's called truth. Now you know what it feels like. That evening, with the help of Michael and a private investigator, we submitted everything to the Elder Abuse Division. The pills, the lab tests, the audio files, and the final video of her semi-sedated, confessing everything through laughter. But we weren't done yet. Because the real twist? Vanessa had opened a bank account in my name. And I was about to find out just how deep her betrayal ran. Just when I thought the worst was behind me, the phone call came that shattered whatever fragile peace I had left. Michael's voice was tense, almost unreadable through the crackle. "Mrs. Carson, you need to sit down. I checked your financial records, and there's something you must know." My heart dropped before he even spoke. Vanessa opened a secret bank account. In your name. She's been funneling money from your savings into it for months. Hundreds of thousands of dollars gone. The room spun, not from medication this time, but from shock and betrayal so deep it cut through bone. How could she? The woman who poisoned my body had been poisoning my future, stealing the life I had worked so hard to build. I sat at my kitchen table, trembling. The pills, the insults, the forced chores, it was all part of a much bigger plan. Vanessa wasn't just cruel, she was a thief, a liar, and a master manipulator. I called Daniel. "Son, something terrible's happened. I need you home." The silence on the other end was deafening. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight, confused. "Mom, I'm flying back tomorrow. Don't do anything until I get there." I wanted to scream, to tell him everything, but I held back. Vanessa had already spun a story that painted me as confused and senile. My son was blinded by her sweet lies. Michael and I started gathering all the documents, bank statements, the pharmacy reports, videos, and notes. I was no longer a victim, but a soldier preparing for battle. We reached out to an elder law attorney, a woman named Sandra, who was fierce and precise. "This is elder abuse with criminal fraud attached," she said. "You have a strong case, but it will get ugly. They'll try to discredit you." Meanwhile, Vanessa noticed the shift. She stopped pretending. The cruelty turned raw and venomous. She accused me in front of neighbors, calling me a liar and senile. She even tried to bribe the local community nurse to claim I was mentally unstable. But something was different this time. I was no longer alone. Daniel arrived with bags and fatigue lining his face. When I showed him the proof, his eyes filled with tears, not just for me, but for the woman he thought he knew. "How could she do this? To you? To us?" he whispered. "We made a plan: face Vanessa with the evidence, involve the police, and take back control." But Vanessa had one last trick. She vanished. Disappeared without a trace, leaving chaos behind. As I sit here, telling you this story, I want you to understand, Betrayal can hide in the most familiar faces. But no matter how deep the darkness, the truth has a way of coming to light. Vanessa disappeared like a ghost slipping through cracked walls. One morning, I woke up to find her car gone, the house eerily silent except for the ticking clock on the mantel. Her phone was off, and her social media accounts vanished overnight. It was as if she had erased herself from our lives, but the damage remained, like smudges on a once clean window. Daniel was furious, pacing the living room, calling every relative, friend, even her workplace. No one had heard from her. At first, it felt like a relief. No more venomous words, no more poisoned tea or bruised hands. But soon, the silence grew heavy. Vanessa's absence was a dangerous kind of calm. Without her around, the house felt like a battlefield left scarred and waiting for the next storm. Michael kept pushing. We need to alert the police. If she's running from the law, she might be planning something worse, selling your identity, siphoning more money, or even disappearing with your grandson's future. That hit me hard. I realized the stakes were higher than I imagined. Vanessa wasn't just a cruel daughter-in-law, she was a calculated predator. Sandra, the lawyer, scheduled an emergency hearing to freeze all my accounts and block any further transactions. I felt a flicker of hope finally, some control over my life. But hope was fragile and reality was brutal. Vanessa had been meticulous. She'd changed passwords, set up secret mail forwarding, and hidden assets under fake names. Undoing the mess would take months, maybe years. Then came the unexpected phone call. It was Vanessa. Her voice was cold but tired. Miriam, you think you won? This isn't over. I'm coming back, and I'll make you regret every step you took. Fear clenched my heart, but I refused to let it win. I'm ready, I whispered, and so is the truth. Vanessa's voice on the phone still haunts me, icy and venomous, promising revenge like a storm gathering on the horizon. She returned faster than I expected, stepping back into the house like she owned it, like the poison hadn't already seeped into every corner. But this time, Daniel was watching closely. The son who once blindly trusted his wife now saw the monster beneath the mask. Her arrival was calculated, full of fake smiles and rehearsed apologies. I've been through a lot, she told Daniel, her eyes flickering with that dangerous gleam I knew all too well. Mum's been confused. I was just trying to help. But the evidence didn't lie. The pharmacist's tests, the secret recordings, the frozen bank accounts, all too real to ignore. I stayed quiet at first, letting Daniel take the lead. But Vanessa's threats didn't stop. She made passive-aggressive comments, threw items near me, and one night, in a cruel fit, she slammed the kitchen door so hard the walls trembled. Daniel caught her before things escalated. For the first time, he stood between us, saying enough. The battle wasn't just legal anymore. It was personal. Vanessa tried to turn the family against me, twisting stories, spinning lies about my mental state. But with Michael and Sandra's help and Daniel's growing support, we fought back harder. One evening, as Vanessa stormed out after a heated argument, I caught sight of something on her phone, a list of names, phone numbers, and a plan to sell some of my late husband's jewelry. That was the breaking point. The betrayal wasn't just physical or emotional, it was financial theft with cold precision. We went to the police with new evidence, and this time, they didn't just listen, they acted. Vanessa was arrested for elder abuse, fraud, and theft. The courtroom was filled with whispers and gasps as the recordings and lab reports were played aloud. Sitting there, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. I was battered but not broken, betrayed but not defeated. The courtroom felt like an arena where my whole life was laid bare, my pain, my humiliation, my slow unraveling under Vanessa's cruelty. But it was also the place where I was reclaiming my power. With Michael and Sandra at my side, and Daniel finally seeing the truth, I faced the woman who had made my golden years a nightmare. Vanessa sat across the room, cold and defiant. She denied everything at first, blaming stress, me, even Daniel for exaggerating. But when the secret recordings played, the voice I knew so well confessing to swapping my pills, mocking my weakness, the mask cracked. The judge's stern eyes didn't waver as he asked her to explain. Her answers were weak, a desperate attempt to twist facts. But the evidence was overwhelming. Lab reports proving the expired and sedative drugs, bank records of stolen money, and testimony from the pharmacist who first noticed the irregularities. Neighbors even came forward, sharing stories of Vanessa's cruel treatment behind closed doors. Daniel's testimony was the hardest. I didn't want to believe my wife could do this to my mother. But seeing the proof broke me. He apologized to me in court, tears streaming, his voice trembling with regret and love. For the first time in years, I felt the weight lift. Not fully gone, but lifted enough to breathe. The judge ruled in my favor. Vanessa was convicted of elder abuse, theft, and fraud. She was sentenced to prison, and restitution was ordered to restore what she had stolen. But the true victory wasn't just legal, it was personal. I had survived the darkness she tried to force on me. I had found strength I thought was lost. The courtroom's verdict felt like a heavy door closing on a dark chapter, but the real journey was just beginning. Vanessa was behind bars, and the stolen money was slowly being returned, but the emotional wounds she left ran deep. Every morning, I looked in the mirror and saw traces of the fear and weakness she'd imposed on me. The dizziness was gone, but the memories lingered like shadows. Daniel stayed close, guilt softened by devotion. We spent hours talking, sometimes crying, rebuilding the fragile threads of our family. Michael visited often, bringing news and quiet reassurance. Sandra helped me understand my rights and guided me through the complex world of elder care and protection laws. Together, they became my shield. But the hardest part was forgiving, not Vanessa, but myself. For trusting too much, for letting the abuse continue, for doubting my own instincts. Slowly, with every small victory, cooking a meal without fear, walking in the garden, laughing again, I reclaimed pieces of my old self. I started attending a local support group for elder abuse survivors, sharing my story and hearing others' truths. It was there I realized how many silent victims there were, trapped by shame and silence. That's why I'm telling you my story now, not just for me, but for all of us who have felt powerless. If this story touches your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. And I want to know, where are you watching from? Let's connect, because together, we're stronger. Just as I began to breathe easier, life reminded me that healing isn't always a straight path. Vanessa's arrest sent ripples far beyond our small family. Some relatives and neighbors, those who had once kept quiet, started whispering about what they knew but never said. I found myself caught in a storm of judgment and cold shoulders, as if the abuse I endured was somehow my fault. It was crushing. But in the darkest moments, unexpected allies appeared. A young woman named Clara from the support group became my closest friend. She had faced her own battles and understood the pain behind forced smiles. Together, we spoke at community centers, raising awareness about elder abuse and the importance of vigilance. Our voices grew louder, and slowly, the walls of silence began to crumble. Meanwhile, Daniel received disturbing messages, anonymous threats warning him to stop meddling. Vanessa had friends, powerful ones, who weren't happy about her downfall. One night, our house was broken into. Nothing was stolen, but a chilling message was left on the kitchen table. This isn't over. Fear crept back, but this time, I wasn't alone. With Michael's vigilant eye, Sandra's legal protection, and Clara's unwavering support, we prepared for whatever came next. The break-in was a brutal reminder that Vanessa's circle of influence stretched far beyond what I had imagined. We installed new locks, security cameras, even hired a guard for nights when Daniel was away. The once peaceful home now felt like a fortress, but one I had to learn to live in. The threats intensified in subtle ways, strange calls with silence on the other end, parked cars that vanished when I looked out the window, and eerie footsteps in the garden. Each time, my heart raced, but I refused to show fear. I was a survivor, not a victim. Clara helped me write letters to local authorities and media, sharing our story while protecting our privacy. Public awareness started to grow, and with it came support from people I never expected. Neighbors who had witnessed Vanessa's behavior but stayed silent for too long now stepped forward with statements. Meanwhile, Daniel's job offered him a transfer closer to home, and his presence became a comforting shield. But the emotional toll was heavy. He struggled with anger and guilt, sometimes lashing out, sometimes withdrawing. I reminded him gently that healing is a process for both of us. One evening, Michael brought a surprise, a confidential tip that Vanessa's closest accomplice had been arrested trying to flee the state. The network was unraveling piece by piece. With Vanessa's accomplice behind bars, the police finally had the leverage they needed to unravel the tangled web of lies and manipulation. Documents surfaced revealing a history of scams and fraud, spanning years and targeting vulnerable elders like me. It was a chilling reminder of how easily trust can be weaponized. Daniel and I sifted through files, discovering that Vanessa had been siphoning money not only from me, but from several other families, friends, and neighbors who were too afraid to speak out. The extent of her betrayal was staggering. But amid the chaos, a surprising revelation emerged. Vanessa's cruelty was rooted in her own dark past, a history of neglect and abuse that had twisted her soul. It didn't excuse her actions, but it helped explain the monster she'd become. I realized forgiveness would be a long journey, not for her sake, but for my own peace. With Michael's steady support and Sandra's sharp legal mind, we prepared for the final battles ahead, reclaiming not just my stolen wealth, but my dignity. The days after uncovering Vanessa's web of deceit felt like walking through a dense fog, every step uncertain, every shadow a possible threat or heartbreak. I had always believed my golden years would be calm, a time to rest and enjoy the fruits of my labor. Instead, I found myself tangled in legal battles, emotional turmoil, and a fight to reclaim not just my money, but my very sense of self. Daniel was by my side every moment he could be. He'd returned home permanently, trading his overseas job for a quieter life dedicated to helping me heal. The guilt in his eyes was heavy. He kept asking himself how he had been so blind for so long. But together, we faced what came next. Sandra, my tireless lawyer, had become more than just legal counsel. She was my strategist, my confidant, the voice of reason when my emotions threatened to overwhelm me. "Miriam," she said firmly during one tense meeting, "this isn't just about recovering funds. It's about making sure Vanessa never hurts another person. We have to be thorough and patient." The legal proceedings dragged on, a grueling marathon of hearings, affidavits, and court appearances. Each session was exhausting, the weight of reliving my trauma pressing heavily on my shoulders. But with every testimony, every piece of evidence laid bare, I felt the walls closing in on Vanessa's lies. Meanwhile, the financial recovery was painstaking. Banks moved slowly, and Vanessa's tangled accounts had been cleverly disguised. The stolen assets weren't just money. They included heirlooms, jewelry, and even property titles transferred under false pretenses. Sandra helped me coordinate with forensic accountants, piecing together transactions like a detective solving a cold case. Amid this chaos, my health began to improve. With the right medications under Michael's watchful eye, my strength returned. I was no longer the frail, dizzy woman Vanessa tried to turn me into. I walked again without fear, cooked meals with pride, and even started tending the small garden I'd abandoned. Yet, the scars remained, not just physical, but emotional. Trust was fragile now. I felt wary of new people, afraid to open my heart. The betrayal from the one person who should have cared for me cut deeper than any bruise. It was in these moments of quiet despair that Clara's friendship became my lifeline. She would visit, bringing laughter and stories, reminding me that life could still hold joy. We started volunteering together at the local senior center, sharing our stories and advocating for elder rights. Helping others gave me purpose beyond my pain. One afternoon, as we sat under the shade of a sprawling oak, Clara turned to me and said, "You're stronger than you think, Miriam. This story, your story, is going to change lives." Her words planted a seed in my heart. Maybe sharing my journey could protect others from the darkness I'd endured. But even as hope blossomed, the final chapters of this battle were still unwritten. Vanessa's defense team was relentless, trying to discredit me, painting me as unreliable, confused, even mentally unwell. The courtroom drama was far from over. With Daniel's unwavering support, Michael's vigilance, Sandra's legal expertise, and Clara's friendship, I braced myself for the last fight, the one that would finally put an end to Vanessa's reign of terror. If you're still here with me, thank you. Your kindness and strength carry me forward. Please like, share, and subscribe to help raise awareness about elder abuse. And I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Let's stand together. The day of the final court hearing arrived like a storm I had been bracing for months. My heart hammered in my chest as Daniel helped me out of the car. The courthouse loomed large and cold, its walls echoing with stories of justice and sometimes injustice. But today, I was determined it would be the former. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Vanessa sat in the defendant's chair, her face a mask of defiance and exhaustion. I could see the fatigue in her eyes, but also a flicker of something dangerous, desperation. Her lawyers had been relentless, trying to chip away at my credibility, portraying me as senile and forgetful, but I was prepared. Sandra stood by my side, papers neatly arranged, eyes sharp and focused. Michael sat just behind us, a quiet pillar of support. Daniel held my hand tightly, grounding me. The proceedings began with testimonies from the pharmacist who had first raised concerns about my medication and the forensic accountant who meticulously traced the money Vanessa had stolen. Their evidence was clear and undeniable, painting a portrait of deliberate, cruel abuse. Then came my turn. I spoke slowly, clearly, every word carrying the weight of years of pain and resilience. I told the court about the subtle changes I noticed, the dizziness, the confusion, the fear that had crept into my life. I described Vanessa's cruelty, the pills she switched, the insults, the lies, and the betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound. The room was silent as I finished, the judge's eyes locked on mine. I felt a surge of strength, a fire that no poison could extinguish. Vanessa's defense tried one last time to discredit me, but their arguments faltered against the mountain of evidence. After hours of deliberation, the judge pronounced the verdict. Vanessa was guilty on all charges. She was sentenced to prison time and ordered to pay restitution. The judge's words rang with finality, but also with justice restored. As we left the courthouse, Daniel hugged me tightly, whispering, "You're the strongest person I know." That night, as I sat quietly in my living room, I felt a weight lift, not just from the verdict, but from the years of fear and betrayal. I was free. If this story has touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. And please tell me, where are you watching from? Your support gives me strength. The courtroom victory was a monumental step, but as I soon discovered, healing is rarely as simple as a verdict. The chains Vanessa had wrapped around my life, both visible and invisible, would take time to fully break. Each morning I woke up determined to reclaim more of myself, yet shadows of doubt and pain often lingered, like unwelcome guests refusing to leave. Daniel stayed by my side, a constant reminder that family can heal even after the deepest wounds. But it was in the small moments, the quiet cups of tea shared on the porch, the laughter we coaxed from our garden's stubborn roses, that trust slowly began to weave its delicate threads again. He admitted his mistakes, and I forgave him, knowing that love is stronger than blindness or betrayal. Michael continued to check on my health and well-being, ensuring the right medications, offering comfort when the past threatened to resurface in nightmares. Clara's visits became a cherished ritual, her bright spirit a beacon in the long road ahead. Together, we began volunteering, turning my pain into purpose by helping others facing similar battles. Yet, there were days when the scars felt too raw, when the silence of the house echoed too loudly. I learned to lean into those moments, not to hide from the hurt, but to understand it. With Sandra's guidance, I explored ways to protect myself legally and emotionally, attending workshops on elder rights and self-advocacy. Knowledge, I realized, was a powerful balm. One afternoon, while sorting through old photo albums, I paused on a picture of my late husband and me, young and hopeful. I smiled through tears, realizing that despite all that had happened, my story was far from over. I had survived betrayal, cruelty, and loss. Now, I was ready to live again on my own terms. Just as I thought I was settling into this new chapter of my life, an unexpected message arrived, an old friend reaching out after years of silence. Her name was Evelyn, someone I hadn't spoken to since before Vanessa darkened my doorstep. Evelyn was a retired judge, known for her fierce dedication to justice and her kindness behind closed doors. She had heard about my story through the community and wanted to help. At first, I was hesitant. Trust was fragile, and the past had taught me to be wary. But Evelyn's warmth and wisdom were undeniable. She visited often, listening carefully and offering advice that went beyond legal matters. She spoke of healing, empowerment, and reclaiming dignity. With Evelyn's guidance, I began documenting everything, my experiences, the abuse, the recovery. She helped me prepare talks and articles to share with local organizations, aiming to protect other elders from falling into similar traps. Her influence opened doors I hadn't dared approach before, connecting me with advocacy groups and support networks. But even as I built these new alliances, Vanessa's shadow lingered. She had appealed her sentence, attempting to twist the narrative again. Yet, with Evelyn's support and the solid evidence we'd gathered, the appeal was denied. Evelyn reminded me that sometimes the greatest strength comes not just from fighting battles, but from standing tall after they're over. With Evelyn's support, I found strength I hadn't realized was inside me. We began traveling to speak at community centers, hospitals, and senior groups, sharing my story not as a victim, but as a survivor and a fighter. The more I spoke, the more I saw faces light up with recognition and hope. Many told me they too had suffered in silence, waiting for someone to say, "You're not alone." But amidst this newfound purpose, I struggled with a question that haunted me every day. Could I ever forgive Vanessa? It was not easy. The pain she caused, the years stolen, and the betrayal cut deep. Yet, holding on to anger only chained me to the past. With Daniel and Evelyn's gentle guidance, I began to open my heart, to forgive not for her sake, but for mine. One quiet afternoon, I wrote a letter addressed to Vanessa. I told her about the pain, the lessons, and the strength I'd found. I told her forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but releasing the power she held over me. I never sent the letter, but writing it freed me in ways I hadn't imagined. Then, unexpectedly, Vanessa reached out from prison, asking for forgiveness. She said she wanted to change, to face her demons. I listened, but I knew forgiveness was a journey, not a switch. As I look forward, I know my past will always be part of me, but it will no longer define me. I am no longer the woman who is silenced and controlled. I am Miriam, a survivor, a voice, a light for others. After years of hardship and heartbreak, I began to rediscover the simple joys that Vanessa had tried to steal from me. Mornings filled with sunlight streaming through the kitchen window, the scent of freshly brewed coffee, and the quiet laughter of Daniel as he shared stories from his day. These moments, small and fragile, became my sanctuary. I took up painting again, a hobby I had abandoned decades ago. With each brushstroke, I poured out my pain, my hope, and my determination to heal. The canvas became a mirror of my soul, capturing the journey from darkness into light. I also started attending a local gardening club. The earth beneath my fingers reminded me that life, no matter how battered, can bloom again. Friends I had long lost touch with returned, drawn by the changes they saw in me. Together, we planted flowers and friendships alike. Despite the scars, I felt a new strength blossoming inside me, a quiet confidence born from surviving the worst and choosing to live fully anyway. One evening, Daniel and I sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. He squeezed my hand and said, "Mom, you're the bravest person I know." I smiled, feeling a peace I hadn't known in years. Even as I embraced the joys of my new life, the shadows of the past occasionally crept in, unexpected reminders that healing isn't a straight path. Some days, a sudden wave of sadness would wash over me, or a haunting memory would resurface without warning. It was a reminder that trauma leaves marks, even when the surface seems calm. Daniel noticed these moments too. "Mom, it's okay to have bad days," he told me gently one afternoon. "You don't have to be strong all the time." His words comforted me more than he knew. With Evelyn and Clara's continued support, I learned tools to face these shadows, mindfulness, therapy, and the power of community. I found strength in sharing, knowing that vulnerability is not weakness, but courage. Vanessa remained in prison, her appeals denied. Occasionally, I received letters from her, some filled with remorse, others with bitterness. I chose not to respond, protecting my peace. As the seasons changed, so did I, growing more resilient, more hopeful. The garden I tended flourished, a living symbol of my own renewal. The journey from silence to strength was not one I traveled alone. As I slowly reclaimed my life, it became clear that my story was just one of many countless elders trapped in shadows, hidden behind closed doors, their pain unseen and unheard. That realization sparked something powerful inside me, a calling to turn my suffering into a beacon of hope for others. With Clara's unwavering friendship and Evelyn's seasoned wisdom, we began laying the foundation for a community support network dedicated to elder abuse awareness and prevention. What started as informal conversations and coffee gatherings soon blossomed into organized workshops, legal clinics, and outreach programs. We partnered with local hospitals, senior centers, and law enforcement agencies to create safe spaces where elders could share their experiences without fear or shame. Daniel, having witnessed the toll abuse took on his mother firsthand, became a passionate advocate as well. He helped coordinate volunteer efforts and spread awareness through social media, using his voice to amplify ours. Michael contributed by training caregivers and pharmacists to recognize the subtle signs of medication tampering and neglect, ensuring that others wouldn't fall victim as I had. The work was exhausting and often heartbreaking. We listened to stories of physical abuse, emotional torment, financial exploitation, and loneliness that cut as deeply as any wound. Yet, within those stories, there was also remarkable resilience, a refusal to be broken. Each survivor who found courage to speak out inspired us all. Our network grew steadily. We hosted community events where families learned how to protect their elders and survivors found friendship and healing. Local leaders began paying attention, funding programs, and pushing for stronger legal protections. The silence that once cloaked elder abuse was breaking. But the path wasn't without obstacles. Some families resisted, unwilling to face uncomfortable truths. Others doubted the effectiveness of change. At times, I felt the weight of responsibility crushing, the memories threatening to pull me back into despair. Yet, every time doubt crept in, a new voice of gratitude or courage lifted me. One crisp autumn afternoon, as golden leaves drifted outside the community center's windows, we held a candlelight vigil for victims of elder abuse. Hundreds gathered, survivors, families, advocates, all united in solidarity. I looked around at the faces illuminated by soft flames and felt a fierce pride. Together, we had turned pain into power, isolation into community. As the vigil ended and people slowly dispersed into the night, Clara squeezed my hand and whispered, "Look at what you started. This is just the beginning." And she was right. My story was no longer just mine. It had become a movement, a promise that no elder should suffer in silence, that every voice matters, and that together we are stronger. After years of hardship, advocacy, and healing, I had grown stronger, not just for myself, but for everyone who needed a voice. Yet, even as my community blossomed, personal trials remained. Trust, once shattered, is fragile and slow to rebuild. Daniel and I faced difficult conversations about boundaries and healing. He was learning to be patient with my lingering fears, while I struggled to let go of the past fully. Sometimes, I found myself doubting the kindness of others or fearing betrayal anew. One particularly painful moment came when a distant relative questioned the details of Vanessa's abuse, sowing seeds of doubt that momentarily shook me. But the support of friends like Evelyn, Clara, and Michael reminded me that my truth was real and my strength was undeniable. At the same time, our support network faced external challenges, funding cuts, political pushback, and skepticism from some community members. Yet, each obstacle became an opportunity to educate and galvanize. We wrote petitions, met with officials, and held public forums that brought more attention to elder abuse. The culmination of these efforts was a landmark local ordinance strengthening protections for elders, mandating better caregiver training, and establishing clearer reporting channels. The victory was bittersweet, a testament to what had been endured and what still needed to be done. Through it all, I continued to share my story, now with confidence and hope, as a testament to survival and change. I knew the journey wasn't over, but the path was clearer, lit by the courage of those who refused to remain silent. The courtroom battles, the broken trust, the endless nights of fear, all felt like distant echoes now as I stood at the threshold of a new life. With Vanessa's sentence final and my family slowly mending, I was no longer defined by what had happened to me, but by the strength I had found within. The support network we built had grown into a powerful community force, inspiring others to stand up, speak out, and protect those most vulnerable. I watched as survivors embraced their voices, sharing stories that once would have been hidden in shame. Daniel and I had rebuilt our bond stronger and more honest than ever. Our quiet evenings filled with shared laughter, plans for the future, and a deeper understanding of resilience. Most importantly, I had reclaimed my dignity and peace. Forgiveness had freed me from the chains of anger, allowing space for hope and healing. I learned that true power lies not in revenge, but in rising above the pain and choosing to live fully. As I share this story with you, I hope it lights a spark, a reminder that no matter how dark the night, dawn always comes. If you are suffering in silence, know that you are not alone, and there is strength in speaking out. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I'd love to hear, where are you watching from? Together, we rise.